Well, hello, welcome back to this is essentially kind of a secondary video to a little tutorial on the amazing bowl of the pelvis because there's a really important sort of concept or idea that I wanted to have in its own little video and kind of give it its own little shining moment of glory because this is such an important concept that doesn't get honored quite enough, especially in conventional medicine. So, and it's this element of energy. So if you go back and you listen to the video on the pelvic bowl, and I give you a little mental map and a little kind of a little tour of the bowl of the pelvis. And in that video, I mentioned how intimately connected our pelvic organs, like our bladder and uterus and rectum, as well as our pelvic muscles, how intimately connected they are to your body's stress response. And you're essentially almost subconsciously, not almost, for sure, subconsciously connected to brain, nervous system. And so these organs really respond when the body doesn't feel safe, they respond. And sometimes just to the memory of what it felt like not to feel safe. So it's pretty interesting territory to kind of dive into, but really miraculous because this is an area of the body that holds a lot of energy. So first of all, the element or the idea of energy is not a woo-woo thing. Like our hearts beat off of energy, our brains think off of energy, our muscles work based off of energy. So as humans, we are energetic beings. So energy is a piece of the conversation. Geez, our daily energy, mitochondria, like if we want to kind of take it from the science perspective, our bodies are full of little, energy production units that hopefully work day to day. Now, when I was working in conventional PT clinics, which I loved, I worked in amazing places with amazing people. But one thing that I always kind of felt like, how come we don't talk about this more often? It's the element of how life influences the bowls of our pelvis and the way that our bladders function, the way that our bowels function, the way that our digestive system runs, and even the way of our sexuality and how, we always talk about libido in this culture, but yet we're also a very stressed out, sometimes most of the time unwell culture. So I'm like, there's a disconnect. There's a disconnect. So let's get that reconnected and talk about energy. So essentially, with the bowl of the pelvis, this is very much one of the main energy centers of the body. So if you're somebody that you've done any yoga, you've dabbled in yoga, you probably know chakras exist. So, when we think of the chakras, or again, energy centers, you can think about energy centers as being areas of the body where there's like a high density of nerves and neural tissue, okay, where there's a lot of signaling going on. There's a lot of kind of protection for you as a human because our nervous system is designed to keep us safe and alive and well, not always comfortable, but safe. So, this pelvic bowl, if you think about, this is where your like roots are. So for those of you who are familiar with yoga or yoga practices or chakras, here's what I love to kind of highlight is that if you, oops, there goes my first layer. If you highlight, this is where like the rectum would course through. And I always think you can imagine a little root that goes from where that rectum sits all the way down, down, down into planet Earth. It like literally keeps us rooted. So one of the energies within the bowl of the pelvis that I think is important to highlight is our sense of groundedness, our sense of kind of stability. Now, again, this can feel a little esoteric, or as people say, woo woo, especially if you're not used to talking in terms of energy. But if you think about the times in your life when you felt really good, like life just feels like it's flowing and you feel pretty calm, you feel rooted, you feel like you have a sense of stability and a purpose and a place, and you're enjoying your day-to-day activities and the people you do them with, that's a sense of rootedness, right? A sense of place. So often the people that I work with, especially the women, they've been through, oh my gosh, job transitions, hormonal transitions, relationship transitions, parental transitions. And so I feel like women, especially, we, our sense of rootedness and our sense of place and our sense of community can really be knocked off course at multiple times in our life. And believe it or not, there are practices, breath practices, mobility practices. This is where we can kind of use the wisdom of plant medicine, earth medicine, kind of plant allies to be able to help kind of right our ship or help us feel rooted again. Because again, when we're talking about energy and kind of the energy of feeling kind of grounded and stable, that energy flows bidirectionally. So again, in that previous video about the bowl of the pelvis, I talk about how the brain and the nervous system are inherently connected to the bowl of the pelvis. So I always think like there's this like tube of light. That's how I picture it. This tube of light that goes from brain to bladder and back again, brain to bowel and back again. So that bidirectional energy channel, you want to keep flowing. You want to keep kind of lit up. And a lot of times there's good reasons why it might kind of go silent or kind of darken or dampen or dimmer. So a sense of grounded stability lives in the pelvis, a sense of creativity. So our creative juices live in the bowl of the pelvis, right? So this legitimately can mean, okay, so uterus holds life, creates life. Like there's a lot we could say about that, talk about miraculous, but a lot of creative kind of mojo, whether we want to think of that in terms of like sexual functioning and kind of like sexuality, that's a very kind of creative, flowy, feminine sort of energy. And whether you create life, babies, or maybe you use your voice to teach, you're creating content, right? Maybe you're using your hands to create something really cool and fun that you're going to offer to your family as gifts or to the community and sell, right? As a part of a small business. Maybe you create movement. Maybe you're a creator of, mobility and movement, right? So creation can look and feel like a lot of things, but a lot of times if you are a creator, you're going to have these kind of peaks and valleys in your desire to do your art, to work your craft. So a lot of times that creative mojo really lives in the bowl of the pelvis. And sometimes I've actually worked with a lot of women who are like, gosh, I used to do X, Y, and Z. And then I moved, I had children, I got married, and like kind of their energy flows kind of out, right? They're just tending to all of the people and things that need tended to. And then this kind of creativity lies dormant in the bowl of the pelvis, right? So there's this kind of like disconnect. Well, we can get that connection back flowing again. Again, there's some really simple practices that are unique to each individual, of course. Stability. I've already kind of mentioned this in like the rootedness, but a lot of times our financial health and stability live in the bowl of the pelvis. So just the energy of feeling like you're resourced, that you have the money to pay your bills and maybe a little extra cush or bare minimum, at least pay the bills. So a lot of times when I work with women who have been through a financial pitfall, they've lost a job, they've changed up, they quit a toxic job, they left a marriage, they got into a relationship that's healthy, but now they're like, oh my God, my sense of like independence is gone. And I'm like blending resources and it's kind of discombobulating. So no matter which direction it's going, our sense of kind of rootedness and stability and feeling resourced lives in the bowl of the pelvis. So when we don't have that element of feeling resourced, a lot of times like bladder urgency starts to crop up. We start to feel like, our digestion's not flowing. We might feel more constipated or tend towards diarrhea because we're feeling worried and nervous a lot. There's a lot that goes on, right? Or maybe again, like with intercourse and sexuality and intimacy, maybe there becomes more pain, like the tissues are really kind of tight and restricted and they're just kind of nervous and they don't want to let go and they don't, they're kind of like gripping on for dear life. And so that can absolutely affect, whatever your version of intimacy looks like. So hopefully you're catching my drift that the bowl of the pelvis is really full of that kind of sense of rootedness, that grounded energy, that creative energy, that kind of stability energy. And furthermore, our energy centers work hand in hand with each other. So if there's kind of a disconnect amongst them, I always think of like heart energy versus, pelvic bowl and kind of creative energy and stability energy. They go hand in hand. But so often, I see this all the time, and hey, I've been here many, many times. Our energy is kind of going up, 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 up. So we're living in a society and in a time where it's all about the intellect and the brain and the mind. And it's, our minds are always spinning and toiling and worrying, and there's a lot of stimulus. So everything is kind of up, 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 up. So our lower energy channels again, maybe our throat energy, our heart energy, our digestive fire, right, and our pelvic bowl, they're not they're not receiving that blood flow, that circulation, that attention, that intention, and we get this kind of internal imbalance, right, that can lend into, immune dysregulation or dysfunction, or immune system issues, gut issues, liver, like kind of detoxification issues, hormonal issues, and all these things that we think of in terms of the integrative health space of like, oh, all of our systems work together, but they're all founded on the energy that flows in and amongst themselves. And they have this inherent ability and this inherent desire to be in balance with one another. It's just a matter of us as humans being able to devote a little bit of time and practice to these parts of ourselves, right? Not to say that our mind isn't important. It is. It has a time and place. It's just we're really kind of heavy on mind and intellect and learning, rather than deepening into the body's energy centers and just the wisdom that the body can teach us. So a lot to say on this topic, but I wanted to actually kind of highlight this in a separate video because it's so important. So if you have any comments, questions, concerns, drop them in the comments. And if you especially have any personal questions or comments, concerns that you want to chat about, let me know. Happy to hop on a private call and or offer a powerful referral. So on that note, go enjoy, go touch base with your own energy centers and see what you notice. See what you notice. All right, we'll see you in the next video.